Okay, so thanks everyone. Apologies, I can't actually be there, and also that this is not so much a Google-based presentation. I'm actually from a Microsoft background, but hopefully that won't be too much of an issue because we're going to talk about fairly high-level things in terms of project management. But I realize there is a bit of a developer theme to this, obviously, so I'm going to try and introduce not so much technology, but things of interest to you as well. Now, the reason I couldn't be there in person today and why I do sound a bit rough is that's where I was last week at Everest Base Camp. So last weekend, I've managed to pick some sort of bug up and I've been coughing my insides out for a week since. So hopefully my voice will hold out during this. If it gets a bit soft, just shout out. I'll try and talk louder. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is starting with, on the assumption that most of you in the room, or most of the people you work with, are from a developer background. What we're seeing in a lot of our clients in our own company to an extent is that there are a lot of people really interested in AI. And obviously you're all here, so you're interested in AI. But there are a lot of people who are not. And it's kind of interesting in that you think the latest technology would be the latest craze to be interested in. But a lot of people are just like, meh, it's there, I'll ignore it. So I'm going to just position things as to what others are doing based on a survey to try and kind of freak people out a bit and get them interested in things. We're then going to talk about what you as project managers, specifically project management officers as well, can do to prepare for all this stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about principles for managing AI projects, which have been covered off in some of the really interesting talks before. Going to talk not so much about use cases, but just a bit about some of the technology to think about. We will touch on responsible AI because, as I said in the intro right in the beginning, this is a theme of this. And I'm going to answer that question I always get asked is, what's the future? Will I lose my job? Okay. So I'm going to kind of start off with this tweet. It's a little bit old now, but it sums things up pretty well. So Joanna here is saying that all this AI is great and that it can write code, it can create pictures for me, do all that stuff. What I actually wanted to do is just wash the dishes. I wanted to do very mundane things. And this is a bit of a theme through this, where I'm going to talk about where a lot of us are focusing on AI for AI's sake. We're focusing on AI and thinking about AI projects as opposed to, could we just add a little bit of AI to our existing projects, to our solutions, and maybe that can make a true difference in a very low impact way. So AI does not have to be the latest, greatest thing, like being chased for its own sake. Sometimes mundane gives us the value. Okay, so what are other people doing out there? So this is based on, I apologize, it's Microsoft. I don't know if Google has one of these, but Microsoft and LinkedIn, love them or hate them, they do a good survey, okay? So what we're finding is 75% of people are already using some sort of AI at work. And I say some sort because, well, it depends on what it is. Generally, it's something like a ChatGPT. 46% of them, this is the interesting part, have started using it in the last 6 months. This is as of May, so it's about 6 months old, this. Now, our company internally does do constant webinars. We do them every month, and we do AI ones several times a year, and we do actually survey people. We track these numbers as well. And what we found is the uptake in the last 6 months is actually really large. People are jumping on board in terms of this. So if you're not, or the people around you are not, you've got to kind of start wondering why. Now, what I found really interesting, is the breakdown of who's doing it. I would have thought that the young people would have been the main drivers of AI. I was at a conference presenting at La Trobe Uni a few months ago. It was an IT and universities conference, and they had the vice chancellor up there, and he said that this concept of universities trying to clamp down on AI and just have people not use it isn't going to work. Because young people are coming in and the only way they know how to deal with their workloads is through using AI. It's just another tool. But the thing is, look at the boomers. Look at your parents. Look at me. I'm solidly in Gen X over there. Millennials, that's not that great a gap. So if the old guys are using AI and you are somewhere over here and you are not, again, I'm challenging you to think about why. And I don't just mean ChatGPT. There are way more exciting things out there. Now, if you're thinking, yeah, it's fine, it's just another tool, most of you in the room, I suspect, are on the younger side. So you may be thinking about your CV and your job. What are we seeing that bosses who are hiring are thinking? Well, 77% are saying that they the people being newly hired are going to end up with greater responsibilities due to AI. 66% are saying they wouldn't hire someone without AI skills. And I start having a bit of an issue with this one here, because 71% are saying that they would rather hire a less experienced person with AI skills than someone who doesn't have AI skills. I actually think that's wrong. I actually think that you can learn AI skills. What you need is an attitude to get work done, to use your life skills, and then you can just augment that with AI. So I would actually focus on the good person who knows how to organize themselves and think from a project management perspective, just knows how to think about work, plan it out, not give up on it, keep focused on it, and then they'll just get even faster with AI. Okay, so a bit of a difference of opinion in that one, but AI is important either way. Now, if we think of some people in the audience maybe thinking, still AI, whatever. If you look at the percentage of people who are actually seeing it as more creative, more productive, etc., even the skeptics are mostly about 50% of them are starting to see it as, hey, I don't like AI, but I will admit this is actually doing pretty well, okay? So it is actually helping me. So if you're not already using it, and if you think, how could you use it? You're mostly developers. Well, there are development tools that you could straight up use it to write code for you. You could use AI tools such as, I know Copilot was mentioned earlier on. I don't know the Google tools so much, but things like Gemini, I suspect you have tools already that can build apps for you and do this type of thing. May not be the greatest sort of output from these, but it can take care of some of the grunt work of setting up the fine details in these things. So definitely worth looking at. We'll look at that a bit further. Okay, now, within project management. So we think of what is project management really. It's all about integration management. It's about getting stuff done. It's about putting all these different processes together to make something happen. And really, it's about learn from what's happened, plan it, replan it, try and predict the future, communicate what's going on. One of the talks earlier on was very much talking about its communication skills, etc. is important. React to what's happening, learn from that, and go around and around the cycle. Now, if you think about that, so that cycle of learn from something, ingest it, build up your model effectively to plan ahead and look ahead and communicate and then relearn and go around. That's sort of what AI is actually doing, okay? So what is AI really? It's about processing and understanding information, helping us find it, relate different information together. It's about learning and building knowledge from that, building out the patterns, building out the semantics. It's then using it. So a lot of generative AI seems to be the flavor of the world at the moment, but there is machine learning, etc. in there. So use what you've learned to either forecast or generate. And then it's also giving us, and this is where we've got to start thinking about the AI tools are giving us AI, but they're also giving us other front ends. They're giving us, forget the model in the back end, they're giving us things like a Copilot, a chatbot, something built into Google, etc. It's just an alternative way of interacting with apps. So one of the things when you think about in terms of these projects is this an AI project, or is it a way to modernize what is in most applications a very dated interface, or is it a combination of these things? Okay, so AI is aligning very nicely to the natural cycle of project management. But this is from the ARPM, Australian Institute of Project Management Conference, just over a month ago. One of the questions in the AI workshop there that came up is what aspects of AI do people find most intriguing? The 39% said automation of repetitive tasks. I think that's wrong. All you're doing is automating repetitive tasks. So what people want is notifications, they want dashboards, they want workflow. We have tools today to do exactly this stuff. So one of the things I would challenge people with is when they're starting to get involved in AI projects is think about, do they want AI because they have just heard about it? It sounds like it can do the right thing. Or are they using the tools they've already got available to them, okay, for just basic automation? So if it's AI, it needs to be more about doing more than a human can actually handle, about learning, about relating and reasoning, etc. If it's just a case of if this, then that, to send someone a report or a text or an email or something, well, maybe you've already got tools to do it. But from the uninitiated, simple automation can look like AI as well. Okay, so how do you get ready? Well, there are a few things you need to do as an organization. So let's say you are part of a project team, or you are a project team that fits in with a project management office. First of all, and this was, I can't remember whose presentation, about 2 presentations ago, they spoke about strategy. This is the number one thing. This is the answer to everything in the world. Why are you doing what you're doing? How does it align to what the organization is actually trying to do? If you can be aligned to that, as opposed to just, oh, we had a bright idea to do this project, you're going to get much further. So what is your project to your project management office actually for? What does it do as part of all this? And then see how will AI assist it. This will keep you focused. Now, once you've got some focus here, you've got to think about data. Ultimately, AI lives on top of data, so you need it. You need to treat that data as an asset. The data doesn't just like, there it is, point you at your Google Drive or your SharePoint or something like that and say, there it is, go and use some data. You've got to think about it as an asset. It needs to be maintained, cleaned, looked after. But to have a valuable asset, you need to capture the stuff. So typically start now, start yesterday, get the data prepped out. What we've found is with our internal projects, we're spending about 90% of our time on data prep and about 10% on the cool stuff like writing code, which sounds a bit annoying, but any data scientist in the room will say, yeah, well, that's natural. It's just not natural until you learn it's natural. So data, really, really important. The second thing is people. There was a whole people, process, technology thing in one of the previous sessions. This absolutely fits in with that. So you've got people involved interacting with this data in some way. Are they manually dealing with data? Are they going to have to manipulate the data? Think about, are you creating more work for them because now there's data to be dealt with? But secondly, think about, is your AI introducing a new persona? We're starting to see this concept of agents and that type of thing coming in, where the agent now could have a name, it could even just a chatbot, etc. If that's just the front end to it. It becomes a new persona that someone's interacting with. So there's a new person in the team, which is not a real person. Yeah. Now, if this persona is going to produce output, will this output actually be accepted? And this ties back to the most important thing is from the strategy perspective and who will use the data. So find that. Don't just build it because someone's asked you to build it. Ask, well, who's going to use it? How are they going to make decisions with this? And as a result, I should probably work backwards off this, because if they don't trust it, do they trust the data? Do they trust the application? Do they trust the developer? Those are kind of the 3 main things over there, okay? So how will you build trust into it? That's far more important than the actual cool, sexy app itself. And then once you've got this thing, now what are you going to do? It's only as good as the data that keeps coming into it and the usage of it. So how are you going to keep it alive? There's a huge adoption piece that's required with AI. It's more so than we built it, now it's in the wild, go and use it. You've got to build out that cycle to keep getting more data coming in there. You've got to make sure that data is cleaned all the time. And you've got to think about, well, the best way to keep it alive is to link it into a process. So if my app and my data is part of an existing process, people are going to use it and keep feeding it. Okay, so step-by-step process. If you're a project management office specifically, or you're a large project trying to bring AI tools in to help you in your project, as we said, the first thing is, step 1 is, what's the outcome here? What's the end goal? AI is not the end goal. The end goal is, what do you need from this and what do you need from AI? Secondly, plan it out. It's just a project. Just because it's an AI thing doesn't mean it's not a project. You may have a different team involved. You do need data science people involved, data people. You need subject matter people involved. You need the developer involved. It may just be you as the developer, the only person who knows anything about this stuff. But there does need to be a plan going on over here that's going to help you figure out it can actually work. There's then going to need to be an adjustment to the process. So whatever you're doing, so wherever this is going to fit in, so let's say you're bringing something to project management, you're going to adjust the project management process somewhat, or else it's just a bolt-on tool. And the bolt-on tool, I'd ignore, okay? So let's say you're using Waterfall or Scrum or something like that. How is that going to change to reflect that AI part? Then, as I said, data, it's all about the data. And only then do you get down to actually build it. Depending on what you're doing, you may need to train it. So we don't see much training happening in AI models that are generative AI based, where they're just calling an established model because someone else has done it. If you're starting to use customized models or your own model, etc., or you're just doing some machine learning, you're going to need to train it. And we'll talk about that a bit later, but it's very much an iterative process. An iterative process needs to involve the people. So people may not like the AI, but may need to learn how to use it. So you're going to need to do an adoption change management piece to this. If that isn't done, the whole thing's probably going to come apart even more so than it would in a normal IT project. So to sum this up, if you do start with an AI-related project, you don't have to boil the ocean. You have to think the whole thing out. So look, you've got this process, but even if you don't get the entire strategy right on day one, just kind of align, make sure you're aligned to strategy, start with something really small, treat it as a proof of concept or an MVP, and try and get some success. See how that goes, and then build it up further from that. Okay, recognizing it can't just be a generic IT project. There is some specific AI components to this thing, but don't try and do the $1 million project on day one. Just go for the proof of concept to start with. You'll get runs on the board that way. Okay, now, so let's say you are managing an AI project. 10 principles that we've kind of figured out. And I'm sure looking at these, you may have other ones. We'll do some questions at the end where you can bring these up. So first of all, strategy, always strategy. Ask the question, what's this project for? Why are we doing it? How does it support the organization or the department or the team strategy? If you ask that question, I promise you'll get promoted, okay? Because no one thinks about that. They're all, first question is, are we going to use Python? Like, don't care. Figure out the big picture first, okay? Then you'll get down to the detail. The next thing is understand the impacts. Ask some questions around, are we using this internally or externally? If we get it wrong, what happens? So let's say, for example, you are bringing in a project that is call center automation. And the end goal is to reduce staff count. People are going to lose their job. And then the AI doesn't work. So people have lost their job, and now the company is not being able to provide the service they're supposed to provide. Sorry, this just makes it even worse, okay? Understand the impact of error in terms of this, and based on that, you'll know how to scale up the project appropriately to protect yourselves. Next, think about, do we need AI here, or do we just need automation? Most of the use cases I get for AI coming through, they just want a report. They want an automated email coming in if something happens. Don't need AI for that. But people are kind of stuck. They've had these applications for so long, and I'm not talking about new applications. Most of your easy success can be just coming from add something to an existing application. A lot of them had an application for so long that they've forgotten that they can actually get this thing enhanced. Or it's too hard to get it enhanced. Now they want to, let's try and work around the problem. The problem is lack of functionality, plus the IT guys won't do anything about it. So let's stick some AI on top of it. We're sure we'll get it solved that way. Well, ask some questions to see, do you just need to fix some old problems, or you really need AI? Now, once you do start, think about mixing your teams a bit here. IT guys on their own generally don't have much in terms of AI knowledge or experience. To get some AI guys in there. But AI, remember, just sits on top of that data. It's all about the intelligence part. Yes. The intelligence part comes from business users. So get your business users involved. Okay, so you definitely want them even more so than a normal project as part of this. That'll help you understand where the data is going to be used. Okay, where it's coming from, where it's going to be used, and keep it up to date. Only at that point do you start thinking about your architecture. So if you're a project manager, you're going to have to realize, well, AI is typically going to have the model in the middle, and that's where the focus usually is. It's got the data in the back, and it's got some sort of front end, like a co-pilot on the front that's going to mix things up somewhat. So make sure you scope your project to cover all of these things. The last four principles really are about, well, it's a slow journey. So start small. Start with a small iteration. Don't try and take on everything. Just prove the AI will work first, okay? Don't tackle it as a waterfall project. It's got to be iterative in some form. Treat it as very much evaluate it, expand, evaluate, expand as you go through. So Agile will be a bit better for this. As I said before, 90% of your time data prep, 10% build, and about 1,000% of your time redoing it all after that. Okay, just kind of keep going round and round. And now you will need to test for bias, which includes just humans not liking it, and which will bring you back to the data all the time. Probably won't work on day one, but realize it is a journey. Okay, so if you've taken all that on board and you're thinking about, well, are we going to lose our jobs? Well, maybe not. Okay, so Gartner is predicting that 70% of PM jobs will be replaced by AI in 2030. 2030 is not that far away. AI is one of these things that's coming up very fast, but also coming up very slow. Someone mentioned earlier on one of the sessions talking about AGI. I did see some presentations recently where some people are predicting at 2026, some people are predicting at 2030. People are freaking out. No one's thinking about what it actually means, though. So AGI doesn't actually mean that it's judgment day, okay? It just means we've got a slightly smarter AI. It doesn't mean we're using it. So what does Gartner really mean here with 70% of PM jobs? Doesn't mean 70% of project managers are going to be replaced. It means 70% of the crap project managers do is going to be replaced. Those of you who are in like team lead roles, scrum master roles, things like that, probably know that you spend a lot of time on admin. It'd be nice to get rid of some of that. So what have they found? Well, they found that most of us are working hard, but we're not getting much done, okay? Spending about 57% of our time writing emails, chatting in meetings, etc., and not enough time in the apps that we need to be truly creative. The idea is that we can actually replace some of that, replace creating status reports, replace communications, this type of thing from project management. If we've got some time, I'll show you a bit of a demo on that. We'll see how we go. But it doesn't mean you as a project manager get replaced. What it means is you get freed up to be what you really should be. And that is someone who is able to be productive, to solve problems, to find your way around issues. Now, this survey from Gartner has come out over the last few years, and it's actually shifted over time. It started with people really being fearful, thinking that like the robots are coming for our jobs. It's now shifted to people starting to see it as something that can improve their own personal productivity. And this is where people are getting excited by this. So yes, there is a potential for headcount there. But what we're seeing from a project management point of view is that it frees you up to fight fires as opposed to just document what's happened in the past. That's the most important thing about this. But it does mean that you need to change a bit. So you and anyone else on the team, so those of you who are just developers, you're thinking, yeah, project management, whatever. The reality is as you will get older, you will get senior, you will end up managing projects whether you become a project manager or not. So stuff becomes relevant to you, or you'll just be working in a world where there are AI tools around you. You need to change. What it's about now is not so much I'm a coding expert, I've memorized this entire language and I know all about that, or I'm a process expert, I've memorized the entire project management process, so I'm the go-to person on that. It's now more about emotional intelligence. It's more about, can you be flexible? Can you be creative? Can you be more analytical with what's coming out? So the soft skills are becoming really, really important because the AI can help you with the hard skills. The AI can help you write code. It can help you to actually figure out, how to tackle a problem, but it can't help you understand the problem. AI is not emotional. It's not going to be able to really hear from those users and get them to explain what's needed and really understand how that fits into the big picture. Now, yeah, you can build AI that can help a bit with that, but you as being that trusted person that someone can actually explain their problems to, that's what's really important here, okay? So you as that emotional animal, that flexible, analytical, emotional animal is able to sit between the users, the technology, the AI, and actually deal with all of this. And that's why you need to actually change as a person in terms of this. Okay, so a couple of things here, a little bit of technology. We're okay for time. So first of all, if you are in an organization where they haven't yet started looking at AI and you're kind of just thinking about, well, can we do something? What we're finding is the thing that resonates with our clients the most is the really, really simple stuff. So simply help me find information. Point an AI chatbot at all my SharePoint documents and help me search them. Google does that really, really well already. Okay, so there are ways you can just get that working. It's basically a glorified search. It leads us into RAG, so retrieval augmented generation. But even this, we're actually getting a bit further on. So now it's more things like using the graph, using Gemini or Copilot, and letting it start to do the basics over here. But it's also about don't bet against it. So a lot of the things we've built already, we found Copilots coming along and able to do it better. The RAG work, things like, we got LangChain involved and it was awesome and everyone's like, yeah, this is great. Copilot just comes along and like, oh, look what we've got. And it goes from being really bad, like to kind of crappy to sort of okay to suddenly awesome over a period of about a year. So don't bet against the Googles, the Microsofts, etc. Don't bet against things that their model, their tool will probably improve on. Rather think about the specifics in your organization that you can either use their tools for on your existing data or can you extend their tool. But start with the simple stuff. You don't have to become an AI developer to get some basic AI involved. Just start using the existing tools already, okay? People will be blown away by that. Now, the other thing is keep an eye on agents. I don't know what Google's terminology for this is, but Microsoft has agents. Agents as a concept has been around forever. So instead of writing services and codes, APIs to call, etc., can you create an agent? Can you have the agent be created for you by AI? Copilot's now doing this really, really well, where it can create the basic agent and you can just extend it. Okay. The agents are a way, it's basically a new technology in there that's helping you build apps. Whether you see it as an AI thing or not, just get your head around agents, because that is the next big push we're seeing in terms of industry around all of this stuff. As I said, agents have been there for 20 odd years. Because they've now got an AI label on them, suddenly they're getting attention. You probably want to know about this. The last thing is, if you're a developer and you are writing code, well, AI may not be the best thing to write code. It does write code really well, but it's not always the best code, okay, or the most up-to-date modern code. But it's good for checking code. It's good for dealing with some of the grunt work. So again, I'm not sure about the Google tools, but in the Microsoft world, you can get it to basically build out the framework of an app for you. It just saves you a couple of days of setting up the basic framework. So use it for these things, okay? Use it to just check your ideas, to describe, hey, I'm thinking of building an app like this. What do you think of this approach? It's going to give you stuff to think about. There are lots of AI tools that you can use to help you with development already. So think of those stats I showed earlier on, where even the boomers, the majority of the boomers are using AI tools. If you are not, you got to wonder why not, okay? So you got to catch up there. Okay, so what's going to happen to project managers as we kind of come towards the end of this now? So project managers are not going to disappear. There's a guy called Tony Riddle, who you can see in the picture there. He writes a book called Be More Human, and it's really worth reading. Basically, what he's saying is that you're going to get freed up to be someone who focuses on strategy, someone who can get their head above the water and say, guys, we're building this app, but we've lost sight of the big picture. That's how you get promoted, okay? Project managers or just people on projects generally are going to be more about change agents, more working with the users and the business to help them manage their way through the change of this new application, as opposed to someone who just sits in a dark corner and writes code, okay? Because the code could be written by a computer effectively. It's going to free you up to actually analyze the data, analyze the problems, and be able to act on suggestions you're hearing from the business. If you can spend less time in the grunt work, you can spend more time in talking to the people who've got the ideas. And ultimately, it's going to make you be more collaborative. It's about emotional intelligence. Sorry, it's about be someone who can make stuff happen. Nothing happens unless you make it happen. So be that person, knowing that the grunt will get done by the AI. Unfortunately, I'm wearing the Commodore 64 t-shirt here. That's where I started my journey. It used to be about the detailed technical knowledge. It's less about that now. It's more about get stuff happen, because most people can't manage anything. Okay, so coming to wrap up, I get asked this question a lot around responsible AI. Is it safe? Well, you can work your way through I started trying to draw a flow chart on this and found it got too big. Basically, there's no reason that AI is not safe. There's a great deal of misunderstanding in organizations, even in developers, about is it safe or not. First of all, if you're paying for it, it's probably safe. Okay, if you're using some free tool you found on the internet, you are the data then, so probably not safe. If you have a tenant that is isolated away, which you probably in a Google world or a Microsoft world you would have, and your data stays in that tenant, it's going to be safe. Make sure you can set boundaries as to where your data goes, and you can apply existing permission to it, and any content can actually be grounded and passed in there. Understand how to tell the story. And again, this is how you get promoted, because management's losing their minds about this. Like, no, AI is not safe. We've got to watch out for this stuff. What you need to do is explain why it can be safe if they do the right AI, and then back it up with various government positions and papers saying, yep, we've worked out this AI is safe in Australia, therefore go ahead and use it, okay? Good enough for the government, good enough for your organization. So understand this. Yes, it can be completely safe. There are underlying principles. The Google ones are on the top, the Microsoft ones are on the bottom, that are very similar as well. Now, this is something we're finding needs constant education within the organizations. We're finding people, if you do everything I've been saying, you're like, cool, I'm going to start playing with some AI here. We're finding people are building awesome apps without telling anyone, and they're pointing it at a free model out there, and the data is actually flowing out. And like, well, dude, you've just done enough to get yourself fired, okay? So don't get too excited by the technology. Think about, well, from an AI principles perspective, how does it actually fit in? Is it going to harm people? And how can you test and build this for safety of the outcome of the AI, but of your own organization's data? Are you going to wreck your reputation, etc.? And can you actually explain it? If you can be that person who can explain why it's safe, why it's protecting the data, it's looking after us, looking after the clients, and look, these are the principles. Mix the Google ones or Microsoft ones, or come up with your own ones. These are the principles that we're actually working to, and therefore you can trust us, okay? That's how you get promoted. Now, interestingly, this is a Google position. Microsoft has a very similar one in the things that they will not support in terms of this. It's things like weapons, it's things like surveillance, face recognition used for the wrong purposes, etc. So just because AI is very powerful doesn't mean that AI is going to be used by everybody for anything. So have a think about this and anticipate if you're in a job where you're facing clients. I've actually been surprised at this one, sitting in a room full of senior people, and someone straight up asked me, what ethical principles are you using? I'm like, I don't know. You give us money, we'll build what you want. But the reality is it's this, and it's not doing this. And we are guided by this, and we are able to actually point out that within our projects, remember we're talking about managing projects here, we need to say, build into the management of the project these principles. Okay, so finishing it off, the future. Are you going to lose your job? No, I don't think you're going to lose your job. I wouldn't, if I was starting out, necessarily become a pure developer anymore. I would make sure that I could be very much data focused, that I could also be someone who can focus on strategy, focus on change management, focus on relationships of a process as a project manager, be that emotional, soft skill person. From a technical area, there's a lot more than just ChatGPT and things like that in there. It's about AI transformation. So think about, yeah, sure, small little AI projects or small additions, but it's sort of, we've gone through that sort of cloud transformation. We've gone through the digital transformation. We're now going through the AI transformation. So look around in your organizations for the big transformations that will be coming up in terms of AI. If you want to get involved in this stuff, that's the way to do it. Digital transformation is still going on, never quite got there, I don't think, but AI transformation is the next big thing. So align yourself to that. But think total system, okay, holistic system. Those of you can remember the Space Odyssey, where Hal locks Dave outside the airlock. He's like, well, Dave, you're locked out. That's the rules of the AI. Dave can't get back in. You've got to think a bit wider than that. Make sure that the entire organization, the process, the system is thought about, and the AI isn't doing things that is locking people out or excluding the right experienced people in decision making. And think about data. We are starting to see the concept of chief data officers as a role happening. So becoming really, really important. Most organizations have no true custodian of data, don't know what they've got, don't know what shape it's in. If you're looking to make a space for yourself in an organization, go and catalog all the data and see what's usable for AI. As a bare minimum, that's going to get you started in terms of something. So I will leave it at that. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Hopefully I have not put you all to sleep, and I will now see if there are any questions. Okay, I'm not hearing anything if there is anything.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Sorry about that. I had one example. I had one question.
Yeah.
Everything's come back all right. Doesn't matter. Can you give us an example of a project where things have gone really wrong? What was one of the worst things you've seen that we can learn from?
Oh, okay.
You've given us a lot of great, good examples, but what's the counter example?
With most of the projects we're seeing are starting fairly small, at least in Brisbane anyways, but I'm going to use one as an example. This is a machine learning project where the idea was basically, I'll summarize it as project prediction. And they had a bunch of data, they provided this data, and they said, look, can you basically predict the overrun on projects? And it couldn't be done. It turned into a complete failure. And the reason it did was because they didn't understand how bad and messy their data was. There's this belief that AI is magic. And if I give you a lot of data, you can do something with that data. Mixed in with this was us not really being data experts, not being data scientists. You take a data scientist off the street is going to be able to explain to you really well why your data may have problems, okay? So basically, we got to the end where the results of this were worse than a guess. So from a statistical perspective, the output was worse than a guess as to would this project overrun or not. So the project was to build a model to predict would projects overrun. And the reasoning was, or the problem was, is that the data fed in was years and years and years worth of data, but it was very inconsistent. And it turns out that people are very inconsistent. So Derek and Ryan are on a project. We do the same thing 5 times in a row. We'll often get 5 different results, okay? And it's really hard to explain why. The thing is, management couldn't get that. It did not compute. They're like, well, you guys know what you're doing. I watched a YouTube video with this stuff. So of course it can work, okay? There are competitors selling these tools out there. Why doesn't yours work? We're like, well, we don't know, but we do know that the data has no relationships in it. There's no way to actually derive something off this data. So the failure, to sum it up, the failure was us not being able to educate people into what type of process this was. We kind of committed to an end result without going through small steps and say, okay, look, we don't know if it can work. We're going to test it out, test on something small. We're then going to give you feedback, and it's going to be part of a long change management process to work out if this data will ever actually be any good or not. So it did take a bit of digging out of that hole to get back to a point, and we're still fighting the issue of, well, hey, there's competitors out there. Why can't you just do that?